Hello, hello. I will just wait a second to see if anyone's going to join me live. Oh, my heart's beating fast. I'm a little bit nervous about sharing this. Okay. All right, I'm just going to start. And for those that come in later, they can just go back and watch this beginning bit. So I did a post last night. Oh, I've got someone on. It hasn't shown me who it is. Say hi in the comments, and hopefully Facebook Live plays nice. I've had to put Facebook back on my phone for this, so we'll see. Yeah, I posted last night to see if there's any interest because I have been getting tapped on the shoulder for weeks now about sharing this journey, and there's been a whole lot of resistance to it. So, I don't know, last night I must have felt inspired. And once I put it out there, I figured, shit, now I've got to do it. So, essentially, I'm 21 weeks pregnant now, but this pregnancy journey really started about 4 years ago. But to give a bit of a backstory so it makes a bit more sense, I need to go back 13 years, or 14 years actually, to when I was pregnant with my firstborn baby boy. And I'm sure many of you mums out there have also experienced this. Sorry, the light is not that great. I had to come up to the pool. Hopefully no one will come in, but just to escape from all the kids. So I get a bit of peace and quiet to do this. But when I first fell pregnant with Kaiden, our eldest, the birth culture in Australia is pretty fucked. It's pretty bad. Thankfully, there is some beautiful women out there who are changing the culture around birth. Shalom, if you jump on this live, I'm looking at you, and there's many others that are really starting to change the face of pregnancy and birth, which I think is amazing. But for my first 3 kids, I did not have any influence or any people around me who had been influenced by such people. So one of the very first things that started happening when we announced that I was pregnant is that everybody likes to tell you their birth trauma stories. Now, coming from a place of absolute love and compassion, and if someone who has had a traumatic birth, I think there is definitely ways that you can express that, and some people are very amazing at sharing their trauma with a kind of a light at the end of the tunnel version of the story, of the gifts and what they learnt from it. But this wasn't the case with what kind of happened with me. I just got the birth trauma and how horrible it was, and oh my God, it's so painful. Take all the drugs you can get. I did the very traditional hospital antenatal classes where, you know, they encourage you, should you need it, to have an epidural, and encourage a lot of interference. I had 3 very, what would be classed as easy, natural births for my first 3 kids. I was very blessed. There was no trauma in any of my births. It was very, at the time I thought I'd had really amazing births because, you know, everything just flowed and I had a beautiful, healthy baby at the end of it. Then and I'll just say, and after Piper, our youngest, I was 100% absolutely done. There was no more kids. This baby has completed our family, and there was no thought or and I wouldn't even enter into a discussion. I remember at one point Justin kind of entertained the idea early on. Piper was probably only about 2, and he mentioned having a 4th baby, and I just shut him down. I was like, no fucking way. I'm so done with that. And then around the time when she was 4, I started to, well, my life had shifted a lot, in that I was very much on the path of this spiritual path. And so new people were coming into my world, new friends, and they started sharing with me how they'd had home births and these really empowering, amazing births, and where they were very much in control of the process of how that played out. Obviously in birth we're not completely in control. It's like, you know, there is a divine plan of how that is going to happen, but they were empowered. They knew that their body was fucking amazing and could birth this baby. I didn't have that belief. I had fear that had been drummed into me. And they, you know, had really amazing stories to tell. And I was like, holy shit. It was like a whole paradigm shift for me. And I think at that point, a seed was planted. And it was around the same time I started feeling this little soul floating around. But I also knew that it was not the right time. It was absolutely not the right time. Piper was still very much a mum's girl, very dependent on me, and I knew that she wouldn't cope with having a younger sibling. She was very attached to being the baby of the family. And so the next 2 years really, from 4 years ago, so the 2 years after that, it kind of just came in and out. It was like it was always in the back of my mind. People would be like, oh, are you done having babies? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's another one, maybe there's not. I knew that ultimately if there was a baby there that wanted to come through, but ultimately we have free will. We have choice in that matter of whether or not we choose to bring that baby earthside. And so I'm going to get up and move because there's some people coming into the pool. So for the next 2 years was really just the idea was in the back of my mind that there was a potential to have another little soul join our family, but I certainly wasn't feeling called to saying yes at that time. And so fast forward about 2 years, that was pretty much what was happening those first 2 years. There wasn't really any direct communication with that little being other than just me knowing that it was there and feeling it at different points and different times. And obviously for those who know our story, Justin and I were also going through a lot of stuff in our marriage, so there was definitely times where it was absolutely never going to happen, but there was times throughout that when, the possibility was there. And, even in those times that we weren't together, I thought, there was a possibility that, yes, there's a 4th baby for me, but it may not have been with him. And so fast forward for 2 years, but I remember, so the last 2 years, this little soul really started to come in stronger and really started showing up in my meditations, and the energy was building. And I remember I was 33 at the time, so it was 2 years ago, and I was on the phone to one of my friends, and there had been a couple of weeks of a lot of baby stuff coming up, just different signs and things coming in. And again, I knew it wasn't time, but it was like really that seed was really starting to grow. And so when I was on the phone to her. She's very intuitive, and we were chatting, and she's like, oh, I can feel a really strong baby energy around you. I was like, no, tell me about it. I said, I can feel it too. I said, but I know it's not the right time right now. And she goes, I'm getting the number 35. And I said, yeah, that would make sense. Like, Piper will be, 8 then, and I feel like, she'll be more ready to receive another baby into our family if that's what we choose. Because I knew even still at that stage, she would not have coped with another baby. And so at that time, yeah, she said around 35. And then not long after, maybe a couple months later, someone else said to me, I had a reading done or something, and they're like, oh, there's a little baby that's floating around that wants to come through you. And she goes, I'm getting it's either 35 or 37. And I just thought, fuck that. If I'm going to do this, it's going to be 35. Like, I'm not going to be, it's not going to be another 2-year age gap between my kids. Piper would be 10 by then. And I just thought, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen at 35. And so what started happening around a bit before my 34th birthday, my body, actually probably a little bit before, before my 34th birthday, but it was around a year, a bit over a year. Some people know this part of it a bit, but my body started rejecting certain foods. It started out with meat. I just wasn't digesting meat properly, and bit by bit, I slowly ended up only, by the time we left Asia, which I'll circle back around to this in a minute, I was literally only able to eat fruits and vegetables. So what happened in that process was, it started out as meat, and then I couldn't eat dairy, and then any processed foods, and then it got so freaking crazy. Like, I couldn't even eat rice, I couldn't eat anything, and it wasn't just like a little bit of a reaction. It was like I would be stuck in bed all day, because literally my digestive system would just get blocked up, and I was literally and figuratively releasing lifetimes of shit. Like, it was just I was clearing out so much karmic stuff. And in those days where this would happen 3 or 4 times in a week, almost every second day I would be in bed by the time when we were in Asia. And I haven't shared this part of our journey, because when I came home when we got back from Thailand, I was 48 kilos and very unwell. Not in that I was sick. I was just weak, because I had been in a country that I couldn't get the food that I needed to heal my body. And as much as I was in resistance to coming back, I knew that we had to. And so when we got back to Australia, that was essentially what I was doing. I just had to heal my body. I had to flood it with fruit and vegetables still, but also do everything that I needed to clear the emotional stuff as well that was coming up, but also just really have access to the food that my body was needing to heal itself. And throughout this time, not too many people saw me in this time. Obviously my parents saw it, Justin and the kids saw it, a couple of really close friends saw me when I was at my absolute worst. And I would literally be in bed unable to move, and all day, and the only thing that would help it, but it wouldn't actually, the effects wouldn't come in until the next day, I would still be all out all day, was colonics and coffee or water enemas. And So throughout that process, though, there was this little soul that just kept coming through. And I never shared this with anyone, except there was a couple of close friends that I did. But not even with Justin, because it was like, am I just imagining this? I honestly just thought, I still am learning to trust what I receive and the guidance that I receive. But there was this little soul that just kept telling me that this was all for them. That my body, I was preparing my womb and preparing me to receive these babies of high light and high vibration need to come in where there is none, or at least very little karma in the mother that they would have to take on. And so I went through this whole process thinking, is this really what it's all about? Am I fucking crazy? Like, is there this little soul out there instigating this? And let me tell you, I was not very happy with it. On some days I was thinking, fuck you, like, why are you doing this to me? But that is essentially what was happening. I was literally clearing out my body in preparation to receive this baby. And so I went, when we were in Malaysia, I did a little 5-day retreat on my own. Justin took the kids and I went to a place by myself, and I did a water fast and really just sat in meditation and did all sorts of things for those 5 days, and received so many downloads in that time. And a lot of what was coming through was from this little soul that was telling me different things, like its name, how it wanted to be born, where it wanted to be born. Well, I didn't say where specifically. But when we landed back in Australia, both Justin and I felt we had no idea that at this point that there was a baby actually coming. Both of us felt like we were going to be living in the Northern Territory at some point. And so it hadn't specifically said there at that point. But one of the messages that I received was that there was going to be a song, that this baby was going to bring me a song that I would sing, and to call it in, and that it would be a song that would be sung to this soul once it is earthside, for it to remember where it came from, this little star seed, to remember its star family. And so that was towards the end of last year. And then maybe April, I think it was, this year, or just going back actually, so around a year before I fell pregnant, Talon came home one day and shared with me his insights of what he thought needed to go down right now. And he came home after football training and he came straight up to me with no conversation ever being about a baby. He just came home from football training and he said to me, "Mum, I really think you need to have another baby." I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yep." I said, "Well, mate, we're going to Bali in 2 months. You know, it's probably not the best time to, have a baby right now." And he goes, "Yeah, well, not today, but maybe tomorrow." It's like, oh, okay. Kind of works the same way, whether it's today or tomorrow. But he was feeling the energy of it as well. And then about a week before we would have conceived this little starseed, we also felt, I was feeling the energy very strongly, very, very strongly. And the kids came up to us one night. We're staying out at Benalbo, was my little healing space in Australia that we spent 7 weeks at. That's a whole other story. They drilled us, is probably the only way to explain it. They absolutely drilled us to have another baby. And I really wasn't saying much in the conversation because ultimately I knew that there was a little soul coming, but I didn't think it was then. And Justin at that point was really not on board with having another baby. So I just kind of sat back in that conversation and listened to them and listened to him and thought, you know what, I just had absolute trust that if this soul was going to come through, it would come through at the perfect time for all of us. But I also thought that it would happen once we were all on board. And so, yeah, back in April, so before this conversation, this would have been a few weeks before, I took a friend back to Byron because she needed to go to Byron she was flying out to France. And I took her to her friend's house. And maybe a month before that, one of my friends or probably 6 weeks, one of my friends on Facebook had posted that she'd been to this concert of this lady that does kind of cosmic dance sort of music. And I was like, oh, I'm really intrigued. What the hell is this music? I'm going to check it out. And I came across a song that had the name that this little soul had given me as being their name in the song title. And I was like, well, fucking hell, if that's not their song, I don't know what is. I'm just going to buy it. Who knows, something else might come through, but I'm pretty sure this is their song. As they had said to me months before, there was going to be a song coming through. And so I bought the song, and then 6 weeks later, here I was at this house in Byron Bay that I had never been to before. And the lady who had been house sitting the house was there unexpectedly. So we kind of went up and introduced ourselves, and 15 minutes or so later I was upstairs and this lady came in and she said, I feel like I know you. And just looked at me and I said, I feel like I know you too. And I said, what's your name? She asked me my name and I told her and asked her her name, and she said, Daya. She goes, oh, well, I'm a performer. And I said, oh, what's your name? And she goes, Daya Dover. And I was like, oh, fuck off. I said, I bought one of your songs like 6 weeks ago. And I told her the story of how this little soul had come through and told me that there was going to be this song, and then I found her song, and she told me the whole story around it, that she had actually written it when she was pregnant with her son, and it was just friggin' amazing. It was one of those very synchronistic moments. And she told me the story of the African tribe that have these songs where the mother goes out and sits under a tree and waits until she receives the song of her baby, and then at the time of conception they sing the song to call the baby in, and they also at all of the rites of passage for this child, so when they're teenagers and if it's a girl, it's like when they start their cycle and things like that, they sing this song to them. And if ever the child strays from their path, the whole community gathers around this child and sings this song to them to remind them of who they are. That was the exact word she used, and I was just like, fuck off. I'm even getting goosebumps just sharing this now. So, yeah, maybe a week after that, I think, maybe 10 days, I can't remember the exact dates, I'll have to find out from my friend. I know the date of conception because it was a full moon, but I don't remember the exact date that happened, so I'll have to find out. But it was maybe a week or 10 days before we unknowingly conceived this baby. And the conception is a very multi-layered story that I'm not feeling called to share at the moment, not the physical act of conception, obviously, but how, that actually works with these little beings. I will share that another day. But it was very, I didn't believe that I was pregnant, even when I was woken up the morning before I had to fly to Perth for our leadership retreat at doTERRA. I woke up bolt upright and was like, clearly got a message, you need to do a pregnancy test. I still thought I wasn't pregnant, because in my mind I was so certain that this was going to be us singing this, not necessarily singing this song, but listening to this song to call this baby in at the point of conception, which actually didn't happen. So in my mind it was like, no, because one of the other messages, and this is the only message to this point that hasn't been correct, but I understand why it needed to be so. I was given the time frame that it would be July this year that I would fall pregnant, and it happened in May. So I was just as shocked as everybody else that I was pregnant at that point, even though all of this had been happening. In my idea of how it was going to play out, it didn't look like that. So I really just had to let go of what I thought was best and just trust in the process of what was unfolding. And so, so this was June. I found out, I was dead on 5 weeks when I found out I was pregnant, and I was flying to Perth the next day, and I was like, holy shit, what the hell is going on? So there's this part of me that was excited, but there was also a part of me that, hey Amber, was like, what the fuck, this isn't how it was meant to be. I was a little bit upset, and totally ego stuff. But so that was when that kind of stage of what was happening, hello, was very, it kind of shifted after that. So it felt like for pretty much over a year, I was just going through this massive freaking detox that was actually like hell on earth. It was so horrible. I'm not saying everyone is going to have to go through this, but, I think on a soul level, once you agree to bringing this soul in, shit starts to happen quickly, and whatever needs to happen, happens, whether we like it or not. And so it was a pretty intense year leading up to that. And it had only really just been a few weeks where I was starting to feel semi-normal again, prior to actually conceiving this baby. And since then, health-wise, I have felt amazing, aside from having some insane nausea that I've never had before. In the first trimester, this pregnancy has been very, very crazy. But what was happening was that there was still karmic stuff that was being released, and it was being released through my legs. So when very early on, I think I was about 9 weeks, I went to the doctor because I was getting insanely itchy legs, like scratching the shit out of my legs. It was that itchy. And there is a condition in pregnancy where it has something to do with your liver. Can't remember the exact name of it, but I thought, well, I really need to go to the doctor and just get this checked and make sure that my liver is functioning properly, because I had been doing a lot of detoxing around with my liver in that year leading up, and seeing a Chinese medicine doctor and things like that. So the liver had been something that was constantly, not an issue, but I knew that was where there was a lot of focus of clearing out all of stuff energetically and physically from my liver. And so I thought I'll just go to the doctor and get some liver function tests to make sure that there's nothing physical going on. And so I went to the doctor, hey Sig, and had the liver function test, and everything was normal. My liver was normal, and so the only other thing she said, oh, it could be scabies. And she checked out my legs and I was like, what? Fuck? She's like, nah, it's not scabies. All right. I'm like, sweet. So to me, I knew if there's nothing physically going on, this is energetic. And so this is when I was really started to step into really using the oils throughout my pregnancy. And I was working with my coach, and something that there's, again, multi-layered, but astrologically I am just about to go through what is kind of like a semi Saturn return. It's not a full Saturn return, but I've got Saturn about to transit Jupiter. So there's a lot of Saturn stuff coming up, and Saturn rules the legs between the ankles and the knees. But our ancestral karma is also stored at that spot in our legs as well. So ultimately, this was what was happening. I was literally clearing out all of this ancestral karma through my legs, and I was using different oils to support that process. Some with clearing, I was using a lot of Douglas fir and white fir for the ancestral lineage stuff, and then thyme for forgiveness, and there's a whole, it's kind of a little protocol that I was playing with to work through that. And even before I fell pregnant, actually, probably about a month, almost every day when we were in Benalbo, there was this beautiful big old claw bath, the big old cast iron baths, and I would get in that bath, and every day I was guided to use white fir, lavender and frankincense, because even back then I was clearing a lot of lineage, family lineage and ancestral lineage stuff at that point as well. And then it was coming out through my legs once I was pregnant. So that was going on for a good couple of months, where I was clearing a lot out of my legs. So it's really interesting when we tune in and tune into our bodies of what's going on. And, I'm all for going and making sure there's nothing physically going on. But if everything comes back as being all clear on the physical level, then it's something energetic that needs to be cleared. And so that was really what my focus was on. Even though I was applying the oils topically to help with the itching, it was always with the intention of clearing and releasing all of this stuff that was coming through. So yeah, that's pretty much where the journey is at the moment. I've learnt a lot about conscious conception. I think through this process, what I thought it was is not exactly how it necessarily plays out. As I said earlier, I thought it was going to happen in July, but I also know the way that my mind works, that had it not have happened up to that point and it got to July, I would have been obsessing over the fact that, oh my God, this is the month that I'm meant to get pregnant, and I literally would have blocked it if that was what was meant to be. Conscious conception, to me, and in my experience, happens when two souls, whether they consciously realize it or not, have actually said yes to calling in a baby. My yes was more known to me, I think, than Justin's. But what happened was, for him, when we were in Benalbo on our little 7-week off-the-grid retreat, oh, hello, Justin Modra. I'm just talking about you. And I'm talking about how Hugo, our little mate, influenced the birth, the conception, I should say, of this baby. So when we were in Benalbo, I mentioned earlier, the kids were like hammering us about having another baby, and there was this beautiful family that was staying with us out there as well for 3 weeks, and the little boy was 9 months old, Hugo, and Justin and him had a really beautiful bond. And the baby's dad was down in Melbourne working, so he was that masculine figure for him. And there was just I was just actually flicking back through my phone this morning and saw some photos, and they just had a really amazing soul connection. And so when this happens, and I explain this to him, at some point in the throwing around and the playing with the baby and the joy of having this little person to play with, there would have been a moment, even if it was just a split second, where you entertain the thought of, oh yeah, maybe I could do this again, And honestly, that's all these little souls need to go, yep, all right, he's on, I'm coming through. And it was very soon after that this baby came through. And so what I thought was going to be a much more conscious calling in between the two of us didn't actually turn out to be like that, because for whatever reason, I don't know, this little soul needed to come in when it did. And it's all perfect. We were in a place where we were completely immersed in nature. When we first arrived in Bonalbo, I was reading a book written by an American Indian lady. Her grandmother was a Cherokee, and she was talking about finding your spirit tree. So many people know about your spirit animals and know about your angels and guides and all these things, but we all actually have a tree, and a tree that we are connected to the energy of. And what I found out very soon after arriving in Bonalbo was that my tree is the bloodwood tree. And we, in our research of what the hell is there to do around Bonalbo, answer to that question, not much. There's really not that much to do, which was actually beautiful. There's a couple of nice waterfalls to go visit, but other than that, you're very much in a space where it's just, hanging out with the cows and trees, which is amazing. But the bloodwood tree, so Bonalbo in Aboriginal actually means bloodwood. And so here I was surrounded by my spirit tree. They were everywhere. And I think once we had made a decision that we were going to be moving on from there was a definite reason that this soul needed to be conceived in that space and in that area. So there's so many. I probably missed bits out. I really didn't think too much about this, but I'm just trusting that what's come through is what I need to share right now. Rosie, who commented on my post last night, actually said, Rosie is a psychic, clairvoyant, and she goes, I think this might actually be a book, which is funny because it's dropped in a few times, because there are so many more layers to this story than what I could possibly share in a Facebook Live. But I know there's other women out there who are wanting to call in their little star seeds, their little babies, and I just wanted to share that when you set the intention that that's what you want to do, just call it in. Just ask to speak to the soul of your baby. Go into meditation. What started out for me was just a feeling. I just, with my first 3 kids, the only conscious awareness I had of anything like this was that I've always had this belief that the baby chooses its own name. I've never thought that it was me choosing my kids' names. Like Kaiden, Talon and Piper aren't normal names. They were brought to me, and the instant that I heard them when I was pregnant, I knew that was what they needed to be. I knew that was their name. Justin took a little while to come around with some of them. He thought they were a bit weird. And all of them, it wasn't until after the birth. I think he was so like blown away with like, oh, holy shit, this woman's just birthed this child. It's like, yep, all right, we'll call it that. But I knew that that's what their names needed to be, and I knew it really, really strongly. And I really wasn't going to waver from my knowing. It was more, yes, I liked the names. I loved their names, but it wasn't about that. It was like me knowing that these babies needed to be called that. That was really my only higher awareness around my first 3 births. But with this one, obviously, I have been on a much different journey since having Piper, Piper was really the catalyst for opening me up to all of this. That, you know, I have a totally different experience of what pregnancy, birth and conception and calling that little soul in can look like. So if you're already pregnant, it's not too late. You still can absolutely connect with the soul of your baby. In some ways, it might even be easier because it's there, and you can really, putting your hands on your belly and just really asking to know whatever it is you know. Like, ask if you're not sure of the name. The baby knows its name. You just got to ask. But for those who are wanting to call it in, who are not yet pregnant, one, trust in the process. The little soul that has chosen you knows exactly when it needs to come in and knows exactly what you need to go through for that to happen. And sometimes it can be challenging, that year leading up. And it wasn't like we were actively trying to have a baby. It was just like, that was just fucking challenging. And the only thing that I had to go on was like my messages that I was receiving, that there was a part of me that didn't even fully believe that it was real. But whatever is happening for this little soul to come through, trust in that process and know that everything is perfect and is happening in exactly the way you need it to happen. There are no mistakes. There are no coincidences. Everything is unfolding as it needs to. And just sit with it and just ask to speak to that soul, and they come through and they're quite chatty. They're very happy to give you what you need to know if you're willing to stop and listen and get out of your left brain and analysing it and overthinking it, and really just trust what comes through. Because so far, as I said, except for that, you're going to conceive in July thing, that didn't happen like that. That's the only thing, which I'm sure you can understand why it didn't happen like that as well. Like, it was never meant to happen in July. That was just to like get my overactive mind of like, fucking hell, is this actually happening? Because one of the things, obviously, and here's just a little thing on free will as well. In any given moment, we have an infinite number of timelines that we can choose. We can choose to, when we make a decision, it's like as soon as that decision's made, it's like a timeline opens up in front of us that we are choosing. One of the most, the most important thing to me in this lifetime is living out what I came here to do, my highest purpose. I don't want to just be here just to live my life and have a great time and all of that, of course, but I know I came here for a reason, and nothing is more important to me than making sure I fulfill that. Understanding how the whole thing works, that's super important to me. And so when I asked, obviously I have free will of whether this baby was going to come through or not. And I asked, is it in the highest good and the highest beneficial timeline for both myself and my husband, who, even though he didn't realize it at the time, it was. I got a really clear yes, that yes, if I want to fulfill what I truly came here to do in this lifetime, this baby needed to come through. And so when I received that message, I knew at that point that that was it. It was coming through. The only question was when. That was the only, in my mind, it was happening, but when was the question. And so we do get to choose that. We do get to choose whether or not we have a baby. This wasn't just me going, oh, okay, well, you know, handing over all of my power and going, yeah, all right, if that's what I need to do, I'll do it. It was a very conscious decision of like, yes, if this is in my highest good and this is what I need to do to fulfill what I came here for in this lifetime, then it's an absolute fuck yes for me. So, yeah, so for those who are wanting to call in that little baby, then just start connecting. You may already be feeling the energy. You may not yet. And either way is perfect. Just trust in what's happening for you. Like I said, I was feeling it for 4 years. I needed that time to get my head around having a fourth baby, you know, and with such a big gap. Piper's 8, you know. It's a very different experience this time, and it's amazing. I love it because the kids are so involved and they love coming up and feeling my belly and feeling the kicks and really being a part of it. And I joke with Clyden that he gets to do the night shift. He's old enough to get up and do the night shift. So that totally won't happen because that kid doesn't wake up for anything. But, you know, they're very, very involved. It's so different to having a baby when you've got little toddlers running around. You know, I've done that end of the spectrum, and now it's a very different experience. So, yeah, just ask. Ask to speak to them. Ask what do they want you to know? Like, what do I need to know to be able to bring you through? Because ultimately, there could be some healing that needs to happen first, and what that will look like will be completely different to everybody. It's not something I can really go into because what mine will be completely different to what it would be for anyone else. And it doesn't necessarily have to look like a year of physical pain like it did for me. I think when I said, fuck that, I'm not doing this at 37, it was like I agreed on a higher level that, okay, you're going to get the intense version then, because that probably could have happened a lot easier and a lot nicer had it been over a couple more years, as opposed to like a massive fucking clearing out in the space of a year. So, as one of my dear friends always says to me, you don't do, you know, you're intense. you don't do things by halves. If you're going to do something, you're just fucking all in and you just do it. And I think this was exactly the same. It was just like, yes, if I'm going to make this happen, then this is how it's going to be. So just trust in whatever that looks like for you. And I will, no worries, Amber. The replay will be up on my feed soon. I'm about to wrap this up. So for those who watch the replay, if you have any questions, feel free just to put them in the comments below. I'll come back later. It's been interesting. Not too many people have been able to be on live. I felt like I've been chatting to myself the whole time, and I think, well, if that's how it was meant to be, that is how it is meant to be. And if I press post and it deletes, then that's how it's meant to be as well. No one's meant to actually hear this right now. But for those, if it works and you do, and this resonates with you, then I hope it has helped in some way. I am very passionate about empowering women around pregnancy and birth. I will share more about how I've been using the oils more in this pregnancy. That's not what this live was to be about, but I'm getting low on battery. I don't know how much battery I've got left, but I will share more around that. But I just want to really be another voice as well. I know it's not my ultimate thing of what I'm here for, like some women, but I do want to be another voice in that message of saying how important it is to be empowered around birth and knowing what your rights are, and knowing that if you do, one of the most profound things for me in this journey, I watched a video from Shalom from Rockstar Birth Magazine. If you haven't checked her out, freaking just do it. She's awesome. She was talking about vaginal examinations and how, you know, you don't have to do them. Fucking, what a freaking surprise was that, because as far as I was concerned, it was like, yeah, that's just part of labouring. They're just going to go in and they're going to do that examination. You can say no. I was like, what? Because it's actually not necessary, and it can really slow down the labouring process. And so I was like, fuck, that's just like, that blew my mind. And along with many other things that I have learned in this process. So really knowing what your body is capable of, really knowing that you have autonomy over your body. It is yours. You get to choose what does and doesn't happen. And really knowing that you're, if for the women, for the women that are on here, this is not for the men, that you were born to birth babies. If that's what you choose, know that your body is capable of doing that. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Have an amazing day. If you've watched this, I have no idea how long I've been talking for, but it's been a while. If you've watched this far, thank you. I hope you've got something out of it, and I will talk to you soon. Bye bye.